he should be on the team. And the reason why he'll be on the team is if you look at the cap space, right? If they extend Brandon Aiyuk, they create
Yeah,
a lot
there's
of
a way they
money.
can work it out for both of them to be on the team, right? And then would 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 you do it where like is there a way for them to extend? Because my only thing is they normally like to extend contracts after the 5th year, right? But it sounds like Brandon Ayuk isn't trying to wait for that. So, one, do you think Brandon Aiyuk will wait for that? Two, is there a way that if they do push it back a year, then they can cut Debo? Because I don't think it's smart, and I think this is something that people might disagree with. The only problem for me with extending Brandon Aiyuk isn't that he's not like a player that has the ability to be worth like 30 million or whatever he's going to get, but it's in every playoff game, he got 3 targets. Like Kyle Shanahan does not give him the amount of production or opportunity to make that number worth it, in my opinion. And so I think they would have to do something like get rid of Deebo Samuel or something in order to maybe force Kyle Shanahan to rewrite his like game plan. My dad and I were talking about this because I think like it's pretty like a lot of the fan base would rather keep Ayuk to Debo. But my problem is like not the deep like I think Ayuk could go be on the Chiefs or somewhere else and end up being, a star number 1 wide receiver. But right now on this team with this system and this scheme, he's not given that production or that opportunity to produce that in that way. And like, so do you pay a guy just because you know that he can produce better in a different system? Does that make sense? Like, or is his like consistency, in your opinion, worth it? To me, you can't pay both of them. You like maybe for 1 year you can't, but long term you're not gonna be wanting to pay 50 million to the two of them.
And I think the 1 year will be next year because then you have Debo's out. His contract has an out next year. So like it
Okay.
could be like the 1 year, you know what, we're gonna keep them one more year together, and then you have Debo as an out, and you could trade him the following year in the sense of you save, like I was saying, in 2025, you save if you trade him pre 6-1, you lose 15 million in 25, but you save 9 and you don't have any dead cap in 2026. After 6-1, if you trade him, you have dead cap in 2025, which is 6.6. And then that 15 is split over 2 years. And then you have 8.9 or 8.5 in 2026. So you split 15 over 2 years, which is, I guess, more doable for a team to take a cap hit, and you save 17 million in 2025. So like you could kind of look at it as you eat more money if you do it before June 6th. You eat more money in dead cap and you save less in cap space. Or if you do it after, I guess you eat less money year 1, but you save a lot of money that same year. But you also have the following year, you're going to have some dead cap because of him not being on your team. But if you look at Brandon Ayuk's contract, right? If you extend him,
Yeah.
you actually create 10 million in cap space. If you extend Debo, and I don't know how long the contract would have to be, but you could create $16 million. Fred Warner, I think Fred Warner is an extension candidate with Charvarius Ward. Fred Warner's contract, if you extend him, it's 11 million. You could restructure Fred Warner's. If you do a restructure, it's still 10 million, 10.7. Charvarius, 9 million if you restructure him. So those are two candidates, in my opinion, who are going to be restructured or extended, and those are the only right guys, in my opinion, who truly should be the ones who are
Are
extended or
prioritized. Yeah, yeah.
prioritized. Like Charvarius Ward has been playing good. He's still, I believe he's 20, not, I could be 28, 20, 27. So like this is the
Yeah.
opportunity you extend him, keep him to his year 30 season.
I like that.
Perfect opportunity in his prime. Fred Warner, he's not leaving ever, like ever. So
Mm.
extend him. He's here until he retires.
Especially with
Um,
Greenlaw just going down. Like you want to solidify at least one guy in that
and
position.
same thing with Trent Williams. You could create 14 million on a restructure. Um, and so you can look at it as, hey, you restructure his contract, and then if he does decide to retire, you could go ahead and do a retirement contract, which a lot of teams do with big name players like that. they'll completely restructure the contract where the base salary is like pretty much minimum and stuff like that. So there's a couple of guys you can restructure to make it work. But for Debo and Ayuk, if I had to choose one of them, I'm going Ayuk all day. I want the true
Yeah.
receiver. I don't want
Can I
the hybrid.
just because I want to make my position clear. I think that consistently Ayuk is the better player. I think if both of them were to go to different teams, that Ayuk would probably have more success. But I just want to say this on this team, in 8 of Ayuk's 19 games played, he had 3 or fewer receptions. In 10 of 19, he had 4 or fewer receptions. That means like he is not getting the ball, and that's not like that's on Kyle Shanahan. Is he skimming him up? And then 2 is Brock Purdy giving him the ball. I know a lot of people, they hear those numbers and they go, "Well, how do you know he's just not getting open?" There's been thread after thread, Twitter thread for pretty much every game. I think it was Grant Cohn last year, maybe it was his rookie year, used to always put up film of Brandon Aiyuk getting open on YouTube. Rich Madrid just did that for the Super Bowl. Just every play that Brandon Aiyuk got open that he wasn't targeted on. So Brandon Aiyuk, out of all the receivers that you have, is one of the only ones that consistently gets open against man coverage. He's just not getting targeted. And I do think that if they were to pay him what he's going to be worth to a different team, that they would have to recalibrate the way that they call their offense in order to make him a more a weapon for this team, because you can't pay a guy $30 million and then target him 3 times a game. That's crazy.
I
Like,
think
he needs to be getting 8 to 15 targets a game.
I
Why is he
think this
not
is where
doing it? That's what
you would
other top
keep.
guy like Justin Jefferson.
But the thing is with Kyle's offense is that's not how it's kind of ran. But
Yeah.
I would go and use Brandon Ayuk as your Julio Jones. Make him your true receiver one. I get Kittle's on your roster. I get Debo's on your roster. But Brandon Ayuk is now your primary target every route. That's who you're looking for. Now, he might not get to 10 to 15 targets a game like those guys, but let's increase him. Let's get him more 8 targets, 10 targets a game. Because if he's getting at 8 targets a game, even if he's getting 8 targets a game, that should be the minimum. There's 17 games in a season. That's 130 targets. He didn't even hit 105 this year. Like, just get him 8 targets a game. You'll see the numbers. I don't think the numbers go drastically up, because his average is going to come down from this year. His averages was like 17 yards a catch, which is ridiculous. It was like the lead in the NFL. So when you look at that, it's one of those ones where his numbers will go up in yards. His average will go down. Um, I just think at the end of the day, Ayuk's the better true receiver. Debo's the better all around player in terms of put the ball in his hands, he can make a play. Um, I would truly go Brandon Ayuk if I had to choose one of them, and it's not even a debate for me. Like I said it from the beginning when Debo was supposed to get extended, trade him. And I do see your dad's comment. I do see him saying how I keep giving
That's right.
Kyle an excuse that we're for losing. I wouldn't say it's an excuse. I think this is the reason why the Niners lost. I don't think Kyle lost 3 Super Bowls. I don't give a head coach the blame for a Super Bowl where he was not the head coach. So Kyle was the offense coordinator that year. I do not give him the blame of Atlanta's Super Bowl. I know they were up 28-3. His offense did their job. They scored 28 points. Defense had 3. I don't blame the offensive coordinator for that loss. Now, do I think the offensive coordinator should have done something different? He could have, but also I went back and watched that because when we did hire him, I was like, damn, we just hired a coach who was in the Super Bowl. Let me watch that Atlanta film. We also had Matt Ryan checking out a play, so we had him checking out a run plays to pass plays. So he also told Matt Ryan, don't take a sack. Matt Ryan takes a sack. So it's kind of like those opportunities where it's kind
Kind of
of
like him telling Brock Purdy the only thing we can do right now is get an incompletion and
yeah. So it's
incompletion. No, not it wasn't Brock's fault, but just damn
but
fatal last words.
kind of was Brock's fault if you go back and watch it. Look at Brandon Ayuk in the slot, coming out of the slot, wide ass open, first down, wide ass open. Like there's no the blitz is coming from that spot. You got to recognize hot. Your hot route is the guy. Where
But
is
I
he
guess
coming
he
from?
said in practice that he always, when it's a hot route, Jawan Jennings is always the hot route for him. He said that in his post game. I don't understand why, but
I
he
would
said that. He
doesn't
said
make
that
sense
they
though because
ran
if you
that exact play a bunch of times and he was always supposed to go to Jennings.
that's a
I don't
stupid.
know. I'm not. Yeah.
That's pretty dumb because if you look at it, I sometimes in the second one is the go-to, but when he's getting jammed at the line and he's coming from the slot and the safety's still midfield, like that's an easy completion, easy first down. Like that didn't make sense. So I don't know. I thought definitely was, and then but then what? Wait, Brock said this, but then Kyle was yelling CMC the whole time. Throw it to Christian. Throw it to
Yeah, I
Christian.
have
Throw it to
no
Christian.
idea what the fuck that was like on the he wasn't even looking over there. I have
Yeah,
no
so I'm
idea.
like,
I yeah.
but like you could, and I think
Everyone was too confused.
that's where I
The
think Brock
takeaway from
might have
that is
saw
that no one
something,
was prepared.
and that's where I think Brock might have saw something that he was confused. Man, I said
Yeah.
Steve Spagnuolo will confuse you. He will confuse you. He's gonna give you a look that you think it's this when it's really this. If Kyle's screaming Christian, right? Might have been Christian McCaffrey. Like Kyle saw Christian. I saw a lot of people saw BA. I thought BA was the go-to. He's coming out of the slot. You got to find your hot route. That should be your hot route because where he's coming from. Find and replace kind of thing. Um, man, it's just so hard to watch us lose like that. But Ayuk, 100%, 100 out of 100
Well,
times,
I
I'm
want
taking
to
Brandon Ayuk over
really quick.
Debo.
Alberto says, if you ask me, you gotta keep Debo. There's no other player in the NFL that's a threat like Debo. I want BA to stay, but you would have to keep Debo. BA is the fourth option, and this draft class is deep at wide receiver. I think just to play devil's advocate, I understand where Alberto is coming from. My only issue with Debo is he just hasn't been that weapon since basically 2021. You know what I mean? Like, but he still, I will say, like, I feel like I'm so biased because Devo's like one of my favorite players, but he still takes over games in ways that I haven't seen Brandon Aiyuk take over games. But I don't know if that's just because like of the style of offense that Kyle Shanahan runs and the opportunities that each of them are given. But like there's a couple of games each year. And I mean, in 2020, it felt like the entire, like every game, the whole season. But even since then, there's been games each year that like the 49ers would not have won without Debo taking it for friggin', 70 yards, 60 yards, trucking people. Like it feels like we win games off of Debo's back sometimes, or the 49ers win games off of Debo's back sometimes, where Ayuk doesn't have that same takeover power, in my opinion. But once again, I don't necessarily know if that's like Brandon Ayuk doesn't have the capability to take over, or just like this scheme isn't called for a guy like Brandon Ayuk to take over. But to me, I wonder if that distinction even really matters because unless Kyle Shanahan is planning on changing the way that he, calls things, which maybe if they traded Debo, he'd be forced to. But if they were going to keep both of them, I kind of understand being like, why are we going to pay Ayuk when he's never going to have the capability to take over games in the way that a number one wide receiver would on a different team? And that's more, I think that that's kind of what's interesting is like, you often see guys, and not guys, but like fans, and myself included, not want to criticize Kyle Shanahan's game plans and like the way that he the way that he calls plays, but also they want to keep Debo or they want to keep Ayuk, and it's like, well, if Ayuk is this phenomenal of a player and worth $30 million, then you should be more critical of Kyle for not getting him more involved. And if you're not critical of Kyle for Kyle not getting him more involved, then maybe you actually don't think Debo's is, or sorry, I keep messing them up. Maybe you actually don't keep Ayuk, or if Kyle Shanahan isn't wrong for not getting Ayuk involved, then maybe Ayuk isn't as special and isn't worth the 30 million. You know what I mean? Like
So
to me, one of those has to be like either you have to be critical of Kyle Shanahan or you have to say that Ayuk as actually isn't a top wide receiver like a lot of fans try to talk about him.
but you also got to I think you also want like constructing a roster, right? We also have to put together like the idea that Christian McCaffrey is barely 27, so he'll be around another 3 years. He's still young, like it's in NFL terms, even though he's a running back and has a lot of thread, he's still pretty fairly young. Kittle's already 30. How does his body react once he hits that 30 threshold? Does it go up like Travis Kelsey and some of the other good receiver tight ends, or does it go down? Now Does it go when you're
He's
looking
been
at
dealing with a toe injury and now
a
that
lot
shoulder
of
injury.
injuries?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of injuries he's had.
This was
You
his,
look
like,
at
least injured year too, and he still suffered.
then you have Debo who's constantly injured and is 28 this year. In 2
And I
years,
think that year of running back took some grit off of his tires, you know what I
oh
mean?
yeah, absolutely. And so like, and you look at it in 2 years, Brandon Ayuk is gonna be 20. I think what was he 25 this year? 26. He's 25 this year. He'll be 27 in 2 years. That means George Kittle's on the roster. He'll be 30. That means Deebo Samuel will be or 32. George Kittle will be 32. Deebo Samuel will be 30. That means Brandon Ayuk is barely 27 in his prime. You have to keep him. Like you
Yeah,
also got
he's
to plan for the future. You can't just plan like next year, hope you win a Super Bowl, and they're like, all right, well, we won a Super Bowl. Now everyone's off into retirement, and let's go find another receiver. I think to what Albert was saying, like it is a deep class, but that deep class, you should draft the receiver this year at some point, whether it's the third, fourth round. Get that guy. Next year should be opportunity where you get that receiver in line to become the replacement for Debo. Now, the thing is, what everyone gets excited about with Debo for is we get excited about Debo, but we only get him for truly 5 to 6 games where he's at full health and he's
yeah.
completely seeing 100%. Um, it's completely, how should I say it, fully healthy himself. And you're not and Pedro, I'm not saying to play the rookie. I'm saying you let him that rookie sit behind Debo for next year. I think the Debo will be on this roster next year, no matter what. This year coming up, no matter what. I think next year's the year you move on from him because of cap purposes. Unless a team's trying to offer a second round pick and you want to eat the cap and you're going to restructure some guys, you roll with it. But um, you kind of gotta work at that. But I definitely think Brandon Ayuk is going to be treated as a true receiver one next year. When on the Niners, I think he's going to be that guy who takes over that role and sees over 120 targets this the following season. Um, I think they should extend him because you got to think about the future as well.
And like not only you're saying think about the future, but we've hinted on this when we were talking about kind of like the way that we want players to act in games and stuff and standards. When you go back to, you know, the DeForest Buckner trade, like you have to also wonder what is trading a guy like Ayuk, what message does that say to the rest of the team and to any new guys that you're drafting? Like you can end up playing above your draft. Like you can go above and beyond. You can put hard work in every single day, show up to, you know, everything in shape, block 100%, route run 100%, be the most consistent, reliable player. You know, Brandon Aiyuk, we're talking about all these guys that suffer with injuries. Brandon Aiyuk has been the most healthy. Like you can, with your limited opportunities, be breaking records, you know, up there in stats with guys who are getting more, you know, 60 more targets than you a year. I think when we were looking at the Pro Bowl and stuff, I'm trying to remember, but I think all five guys had like 40 to 60 more opportunities than he'd had, and he had the same amount of yards as they did. Um, I think letting a guy like that go, it like kind of almost can decentivize people to work hard because it's like we
Especially,
can work as hard as possible and the 49ers still aren't going to value us. And that was kind of what happened with Buckner. And I think ever since they made that mistake with Buckner, they've tried to like be like, oops, that was a mistake, and like pay people and not do that again. So I do think like just looking at like a mess, you know, from a message standpoint, that could be an issue.
and I think when you the way you worded it, or like, so he also came out of the doghouse. So it's also you got to look at like what your coaches and the team wants you to do. You do everything exactly the way they want, right? He did exactly what Kyle wanted, exactly what the team wanted, just for them to say, you know what, we don't want a guy like that. He did everything they wanted, and he's probably not. And if he doesn't get rewarded for it, that says a lot about the culture. Like it truly does. You're only going to reward the guys that are your guys, right? Like to be
Yeah.
honest, if it was up to me, if I was truly running the organization, George Kittle would be on the trading block. Kyle Juszczyk would be gone. Like I'm just being honest. Like you got to get
Juice
younger.
is like a better route runner than George Kittle right now, honestly.
So like I would be
But
looking
I
at stuff
understand
like
like
that.
just
Like
not wanting to pay a guy like him, because I think they saved $5 million if they cut him.
So like that's what I would be doing because like it's you're looking at everything is like I love those guys. I'm a big fan of them. Like I truly am. But we also have to look at it as this is a team, and you got to look at it as a business perspective. Like as much as we are fans of them, Juice is on an out year. This is his year where after his contract was signed and extended and everything, he's going to be 33 years old. If you trade him or you release him this year, you before June 1st, you save 4.9 million and you eat 2.6. If it's after that, you eat 1.3 this year, 1.3 next year, and you save 6. Like in a
Well,
cap
that's kind of why I was
situation,
asking you. That's kind of why I was asking you, like, do you think that it's smarter to, like, I think what they're gonna try to do is have the revenge tour 87 and freaking re-sign Ayuk, keep Debo for at least this year while he's still in the contract books, try to probably keep Juice, keep Kittle. And it's like, I don't know if that's actually the right game plan strategy. I wonder if what's better is to start like almost totally rebuilding. Like, is it, or is that too drastic in your opinion? Is it too drastic to start looking at letting, because I think people are thinking about trading like one or two guys, but maybe they need almost a team overhaul at this point. Because it seems like either they have to trade, look at what's going on with Kyle Shanahan is and his message no longer really sticking with these players who now feel like they run the team, or start getting in new younger talent. I think someone in here wrote that this seems like the Warriors where they've gotten old and stagnant. Only problem is at least the Warriors have, won the whole thing multiple times. But I
I
don't know.
think I wouldn't necessarily a complete rebuild. I don't think you could completely rebuild this organization or this franchise. And the reason is you have too many big name players and too many big money players where you can't get off of some of them, right? Like George Kittle's in his opt out year or potentially his opt out year where the Niners could eat 18 million and they save some money. So for example, if they trade him before June 1st, and I don't think they'll cut guys like this. Like you don't cut big name players. They eat 18 million this year, they save only 3.5. So like the reality is if they're trading him pre June 1st, they're not getting much from it. Like they're not, and you want to have them traded by the draft so you have capital this year. Or if you trade them after the June 1st deadline, you eat 7 this year, you eat 10 next year, and you save 13 this year. So it's like there's some flexibility there if you want to get younger, you want to do things, but I just don't see for George Kittle's contract and his sake, I don't see how the Niners can move off of him um, next year. Now, it's kind of tough in the sense of his contracts. Like the contracts that they've signed, like they've been decent contracts for the 49ers, but towards the end of their contracts, they're not
Yeah,
good
that's the
contracts.
problem. Even if you think of like Eric, like the if I was gonna cut one guy, it would be Eric Armstead. But even him, they're one of the like with a lot of these guys, Kittle, Armstead, they backloaded their contracts and they've extended them so much that it's actually harder for them to trade them. Now, isn't there something with Deebo Samuel where you could actually put like a post June first designation on it so it doesn't take as much off your salary cap? I don't know
For
exactly
Debo,
how that works.
you
Yeah.
said for Debo?
Yeah.
So it would be so because this is 20 in the 2024 season. Um, you could, but on trades, I don't think you could put a 6-1. I have to double check on that. I'm not too sure. I'm not honestly. I'm not a big cap person, and that's why like I love
Yeah.
going to Rohan because Rohan's good with those numbers. So I'm not a big number guy or cap guy. But when I'm looking at it, the way I understand it is I don't believe you could put a 6-1 trade designation. Like you can't say so you could cut someone and say, you know what, I'm post once post June 1st release designation. I think you get like two of those where you could do it before June 1st, but put that designation. So if looking at that, I don't think Debo, if they were to release him, so you eat 11 this year, 15 next year, and you save 17 million this year. So even next year, you're still eating 15. You're still eating 11 this year. So you're still eating 26 million of dead cap, but it's over 2 years. If that makes sense. So you're splitting it. Um, Armstead is on this team no matter what. This is his last year on the team. Looking at his numbers, so if he's released or traded before June 1st,
Just
if he's
crazy.
released, 26 point 26 million in dead cap. If he's traded, 26 million in dead cap. You get 2.25
Okay.
in savings. If he's post 6-1 release, you eat 10 million this year, 15 million next year. You save 17 million. So I guess you do get that wiggle room of 17 million of cap space. And the same thing for trade. So like his contract is like essentially you're going to either release him or trade him after the 6-1 deadline. Um, you're saving 17, but you're eating 25 over 2 years. So it's like, do they want to have money? And then we have to look at it too. Is do you want to have money being paid to players that are not on your team, or just keep them on your roster and
Yeah.
try to work with it? Because like he's not a bad player. Like he's a really good player,
No.
but you also have to look at it's
I
kind of
mean,
like
when he wants to play in the Super Bowl, he did fantastic. But it just feels like
his health. His health is bad.
you
His
don't
health
get like
is
enough of those games. And I think it was this season he missed. I forget. I think it's 6 games each season, but there's been like bye weeks in between. So he's missed something between like 6 and 8 weeks this season and last season with that plantar fasciitis. So definitely scary when it comes to that. But to kind of sum up the Deebo and Aiyuk debate, I think both of us agree that maybe Aiyuk is the more consistent player, and with everything he's done, to be such a top level player for an organization that drafted him, it does send like a terrible message that you can basically do everything right, overcome, because starting out being in the doghouse, he's outplayed even his. I know he's a first round pick, but he's been like a top level wide receiver with far less opportunities. He's put up Pro Bowl and All Pro caliber numbers and yards. So I do think has star capability, but my hesitancy on paying him long term and big money is, in my opinion, you'd have to trade away Deebo, because there would have to be some sort of concession from Kyle Shanahan that, yes, I'm going to call my system differently, because you can't pay someone because you know that they would perform better in a different offense than you. So like if he was
absolutely.
on the Chiefs, for sure he'd be like
He
putting up
might break
phenomenal numbers.
2K.
But if Kyle Shanahan is never going to change his scheme and never going to call plays like that, then like what is the point of you paying him? Like you're only paying him so someone else doesn't have him at that point. You know
I
what I
mean, we
mean?
have a game
I don't know.
changer at quarterback now, so maybe you throw the ball. And I'm
I
just
know.
messing around,
I know.
but
I know. I know.
I don't want people to take it the wrong way.
People in
I'm
the
just
comments are
messing
going to be
around.
like,
I'm just
um,
messing around.
but
But
for the final, go ahead. What was
like you look
takeaway?
at it like if you truly believe in Brock Purdy, right? If
Yeah.
you truly 100% believe in Brock Purdy as your quarterback of the future, why would you not extend the best receiver on the team? Like if Brock Purdy's going to be this
Especially
gunslinger
like
pushing
they've
the ball
kind
down
of
the
gotten
field,
like a rapport, right?
yeah, like if he's going to be pushing the ball down the field like he did this year, and you trade away Brandon Aiyuk, he's going back to what people really initially thought of him as a dink and dunk quarterback, right? Like, or the game manager. That's what he would truly be. I think Brandon Aiyuk makes him a game changer in terms of Brandon Aiyuk so consistently open downfield that it's a no-brainer to throw the ball down the field. When your guy's wide open consistently, and what I mean, NFL terms of wide open is by a yard. Like Brandon Aiyuk's usually, except his yard separation is
Yeah.
phenomenal.
He was
So
he was getting wide open against the Chiefs corners, who everyone said, and you're right, not wide open, but he was getting open enough that if he was not the fourth, like I think, and I do think a lot of this, I know that you called attention to like this also being Brock Purdy's fault and Brock Purdy not giving him the opportunity. But like there, even in some of the threads that, because I really do think that if you're on Twitter, you should go check out that thread that Rich Madrid put up. He even admitted like a lot of the times that Aiyuk is getting open, he's like third in the progression. So by the time Brock Purdy like gets there, the ball has been thrown to somewhere else, or the pressure breaks down and he can't get the ball there anymore. Like I think Kyle Shanahan needs to do a better job. Like everyone always says, like Debo doesn't do good at like getting open, right? So like Kyle Shanahan schemes him open. Well, like instead of putting that effort into getting the ball into Debo's hands, why don't they do that more with Brandon Aiyuk? Because Brandon Aiyuk also like isn't bad after the catch. Like I don't
he's
understand
explosive.
the lack of trying to get him involved. Like I feel like there's a lot of effort into getting the ball into a guy like Deebo's hands. Where with Brandon Aiyuk, it's kind of like, oh, run your route, and if you get open and you're still open in, after he's checked two other people, then you'll get the ball. And it's like, well, why isn't he the first read more often with his
So
talent?
it's
And if you're going to pay him $30 million, he needs to start being the first read. That's my only thing. It's not that he's not worth it. It's you better call your system differently in that case.
I mean, when you finish seventh in the league in receiving yards, but you're the 36th ranked in targets, that kind of speaks volumes of how good of a player you truly are and how open you consistently are. So it's kind of one of those ones where you can't really blame Brandon Aiyuk because you're looking at Brandon Aiyuk in his 2023 season, like his 38.2 on shared yards, 23.1 target share on the team. Um, like that needs to go up. He had 4.83 yards after the catch per reception. Like he does what he's asked to do. I personally think Brandon Ayuk easily could be a top 5 to 6 receiver in the league if he gets those targets. In my opinion, he's already a top 10 receiver. I don't know. I don't see how the Niners move on from him at all.
I definitely don't think they should, but I wonder also, okay, closing up this topic, because we've talked about like, will the Niners keep him? Do we as fans think that he should be kept? Does Brandon Ayuk want to stay here? Like, do you think it's only a money thing for him? Or because I think Brandon Ayuk, a lot of people like think he's more shy and maybe doesn't care as much. I think Brandon Ayuk has a healthy, I'm not saying it's like a bad thing, but has a healthy ego to him. And he might like in that end of year press conference of the regular season, he said he talked a lot about his like personal stats and feeling like he didn't meet his goals and that he was underachieving like his what he wanted out of his career. Uh, I wonder, like, is he more interested in being on like a contending team like the 49ers? Or would he, like his friend suggested, rather go to Vegas or XYZ team? Like, does he care more about being on a winning team or more about like setting personal records? Because, like, if he's on, the Panthers, he's their number one wide receiver like that and going to get every target that Bryce Young can freaking throw.
I think
What do
you
you
could
think he wants?
you
Because,
could
like,
be on a
if he could
contending.
say, I just want to go to the Chiefs and they would 100% trade him there, he would do that in a heartbeat. But more than likely, if he gets traded, he's going to go to like a worse team.
I think you could be on a contending team, but also get your yards right. Like you could be on a winning team. Like he did winning play.
But
Like he
are the
wants to win.
49ers going to trade him to a winning team? You know what I mean? Like, his friend was like off to Vegas. Like, what is
Well,
he going to do in Vegas?
yeah, I would,
Jimmy
and
G
the
just
reason
got.
the reason the reason the reason you would go to a winning team is because those teams that are losing aren't going to be trading a top first round pick for.
Okay, that's
They're
interesting. I
not
didn't
going to.
even think
So
about that.
especially in a deeper receiver class, deeper offensive tackle class, they're not going to trade a first rounder when they could get a potential all pro right tackle, all pro left tackle, or a young receiver who is much cheaper, right? Versus those contending teams are in the bottom 20, right? Baltimore
They
Ravens,
like want to win now.
if the Baltimore Ravens wanted to bring him in and they're a contending team, you can look at the Houston Texans. They're going to contend, but he's also going to get all the targets on that team. They're a contending team already. So it's like you could go to a contending team and get those targets and yards. I truly think he could do that on the Niners too. I think the Niners need to run their offense through CMC and through Brandon Ayuk. Like, I don't get why it's not a CMC BA show. Like you could be a three-headed monster between Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, and use George Kittle in there as well. So I'm kind of, and I would use Debo in a limited role to keep him healthier. But it's just kind of see like in terms of how they want to do it. I think he wants to be in San Francisco in the Bay Area. Like he grew up a Niners fan. But we also got to put into fact that he has no leverage on his side right now in terms of contract talks. Um, I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's like this drama, his families get rid of him." I've already seen people, "Oh, just trade him then. If you don't want to be here, trade him." We got to put together like he's on his 5th-year option, so he has to play on the Niners this year. But then when you also look at it too, the
Can I
Niners
ask
could.
about that? So, like, because I did find that interesting, like, with his friend being like, oh, they're not going to play here. Like, even if the 49ers don't want to give him a long term contract, he can be like upset about it, but he would still play. And from what I think about Ayuk, he would want to play well because that would help him, like,
on his next contract.
yeah, 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 okay. That's what I thought.
So
So no
the
matter
thing
what,
is,
like, even if he's, like,
yeah,
upset, like, he's still gonna be, playing well.
yeah, he has to be on the team. No matter what this year, if the Niners are like, you know what, we're not trading you. Shut up, we're not trading you. He's gonna be on the team. Like it does not matter. He's on a contract. Doesn't show up.